What's going on, fantasy world? Woo, we had some flippity floppers in week 17. It's your boy Hot Soup. I'm coming to bring you our underachievers, those guys that you started in your fantasy lineups in the championship game or your third place game. And woo, you sick to your stomach. Number one, Patrick Mahomes. Everybody started Patrick Mahomes. Man, Patrick Mahomes, subpar performance, ended up quarterback number 25 in fantasy scoring. And he's Patrick Mahomes. You can't bench him, but we should have. Man had 12 points. That's it. 245 yards and a touchdown. Woo. Patrick Mahomes will not be being drafted like he was being drafted this year. Number one QB off the board? I doubt it. Maybe number 10. Yeah. They need to get a big play receiver over there fast and in a hurry. I don't know who's going to save that man, but it needs to happen, and it needs to happen fast. Number two quarterback, and I know y'all started him if you had him, Jared Goff. Oh, ended up number 24 in fantasy scoring. 24th quarterback. It's only 30 quarterbacks, 32 quarterbacks, and 8 of them is you never heard of before. So we had to start Jared Goff. Man, Jared Goff flopped. 271, a touchdown, and 2 picks. Good for 12.84 fantasy points in standard scoring. Sorry for y'all, Jared Goff managers over there and Detroit fans. It is what it is. Austin Ekeler may be the flop of the season. He was going 5th and 6th pick in fantasy drafts. That man was a whole shell of himself this year in fantasy scoring. And he also was a shell of himself in week 17. 3.5 points. That's it. Mr. PPR, you going to give us 3.5 points? Yeah? That's how you feel, Ekeler? Doing way too much on his fantasy channel and not too much in the real game. Austin Ekeler, 14 touches, 50 yards, and a fumble. That's it. Number 56 in fantasy scoring this week. 56? Womp, 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 womp. Next on our list, another guy who went in the first round, Derrick Henry. If you was a Derrick Henry owner, man, I bet you won't draft him next year. In week 17, Derrick Henry, 12 touches, 42 yards. That's it. Number 51 running back in fantasy scoring. Shit, it's only 30 teams. I mean, backups was getting better play, better points than your boy Derrick Henry. Half of the backups. Got to be more careful. And nobody saw this coming, and neither did I. And the reason that I lost my fantasy championship in 2 leagues, Jahmyr Gibbs. Oh, my God, Jahmyr Gibbs had a terrible game. 16 touches, 43 yards. That's it. Number 48. There were also 20 backup backs that did better than him this week. And I'm talking about, when I say backup backs, I mean there's a starter, and then there's a guy that comes in and gives that starter a breather. Those guys had more points than Jahmyr Gibbs. Hey, man, I'm not saying I ain't drafting Jahmyr Gibbs high next year. He is the man. But for those of you who start him in y'all week 17 fantasy championships, womp, 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 womp. Receivers, man, Tyler Lockett. Yeah, he's the number 2 over there. DK Metcalf's the number 1. But Tyler Lockett is very capable of a 1,000-yard season. What happened in week 17? I'm going to tell you what happened. 5 targets, 1 reception, 10 yards, 1.5 fantasy points. There were 92 more receivers that scored more points than him. 92. Do the math. If you're in a 10-man league and everybody starts 2 receivers and a receiver in their flex, that's 30 receivers. That means there were 60 more guys that had more points than Tyler Lockett. Womp, 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 womp. Next, Higgins. Man, Higgins is boom or bust. He may have a huge game. He may have a down game. Listen, Jamar Chase, Higgins, them boys ain't do shh. And Brownlee got off. The quarterback got off. Listen, man, Higgins, 2 targets, 1 reception, 19 yards, number 80th. 79 more receivers did better than Higgins this week. And I bet you if you had Higgins, he was in your flex. Or maybe your wide receiver too. Yeah, he failed you, but he ain't failed me, so I wasn't messing with him. Yeah. Let's talk about Chris Olave. And I know somebody real close to me that loves him some Chris Olave. Always trying to start Chris Olave. Womp, 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 womp. Chris Olave, 4 points in fantasy scoring, 6 targets, 3 receptions, 26 yards, was the number 66 receiver. There were 65 more guys that play receiver this week to score more points than Chris Olave. Yeah, if you had him in your lineups, hey, got to be more careful. Let's talk about our 2 fantasy tight ends that flopped. Dalton Schultz, he was doing his thing all year long. No way. Stroud is back and we're going to bench Schultz. Nobody's doing that. Schultz fucked you over. Yes, he did. Fuck me too. Man, Schultz, 2.9 fantasy points, 4 targets, 2 receptions, 19 points. There were 37 more tight ends that did better than Dalton Schultz this week. And the flop of the century, people were picking this guy in the first round, a tight end. I'm like, how you going to pick a tight end in the first? Oh, it's Traviskelce. Oh, it's Traviskelce was the man till he found Taylor Swift. That's exactly what happened to our boy, man. Listen, I love females, man. But when it comes to professional sports and it comes to somebody who's great, if they get a hold of the wrong female, they ruin the man. The Kardashians to Taylor Swift. Everybody saw the decline in play, the decline in routes ran, the decline in blocking, the decline in all-out effort, the drop passes, the drops. Traviskelce don't drop the ball. Man was dropping everything. Man was worse than Kadarius Toney in the past couple weeks. Traviskelce, 4 targets, 3 receptions, 16 yards, 36 tight ends that did better than him. You could have got a tight end off the waiver wire. Never draft a tight end in the first 2 rounds. Shit. Never draft a tight end in the first 3 rounds. Did y'all just listen to my overachievers and underachievers? Huh? Overachiever Jawan Johnson, who is on everybody's waiver wire? Huh? Isaiah Likely, a guy that was number 2 until Andrews got hurt? Could have picked those guys up mid-season and started them in week 17 and came out with a fantasy championship. Yeah. Listen to the soup. Go back to the week 17 show. Go back to my top 5 starts and top 5 sits. I told you what was happening to Kelce. I told you guys Rashee Rice was the man and to start Rashee Rice. Bench Kelce. That guy was a shell of himself. As soon as he started flying out the country, done. Finito. Got to be more careful. Those are our top underachievers for week 17. It's your boy Hot Soup, man. Come check us out for our overachievers in our next episode, week 17. It was the fantasy playoffs. Hopefully y'all won your fantasy lineups and you won your fantasy championship. I know I did. Holla.